right, baby, here we go. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. That's not right. NBA Deeper Dive. Dave Loughran, Adam Scher. 11-game basketball slate to break down today, and we're glad to have you with us. Well, it's the eve of Christmas Eve. We've got a ton of games to discuss, and you're at your mom's house for the holidays, huh?
Yeah, I did the family Christmas thing yesterday at my cousin's and then just went to my mom's for a couple days.
All right, well, Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy holidays. I'll forget to say that, so I'm saying it now because we won't be with you tomorrow or Wednesday. But we will definitely have some stuff going on for Christmas Day's 5-game slate. As a matter of fact, we've got Live Before Lock. Josh is going to be covering that. I don't know if he'll be by himself or not, but he's sick with the flu. So whatever it is, someone will be there. We'll have you covered. That'll be an 11 a.m. Eastern show on Wednesday. So don't miss us too much tomorrow when we return with Fury on Christmas Day. Before we get started, Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports is our sponsor, home of the $150,000 NFL baller, but we got a bigger one coming up this week. That's right. You heard me correctly. $200,000 NBA holiday baller Christmas Day tips off at 12 p.m. Eastern. $50,000 in overlay. I said it once. I'll say it again. Get in that before it fills up. It will go quick. We saw the turkey baller, whatever it was, the turkey leg, put up or fill up very quickly. I don't remember what it was called, dude.
Neither do I. I don't think it was that.
The
Turkey
second
trot.
one was the turkey baller. The second one was after the first one filled. It wasn't the turkey leg.
Wasn't it like the turkey trot or something?
Oh, that's it. Yeah, it was the turkey trot. Okay. All right. Yeah. Wasn't the bird wing. But anyway, regardless of what it was, it filled up really quickly. This one should too. $200,000, 50K overlay. And I think 20K to first. Yeah, it's $20,000 to first. And then today you got 5K to first, a 30K NBA baller over there on Yahoo as well. And if you haven't signed up yet, do it through us at awesomemode.com. Very simple way to do it. Go to awesomemode.com, click the NFL or NBA tab. You'll see the building blocks article for today written by EMAC. All you got to do is scroll to the bottom of that, click the Yahoo link, sign up, get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports Rewards points, the YSRPs. They're as good as cash. Use them on the site to play and win real money. Get that when you sign up and deposit. NBA tab, articles, building blocks. Scroll to the bottom, free article, read it. Scroll to the bottom of that, and you'll see it right there. So that's how you do it. Hope to see you over there. Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, sponsor of the Deeper Dive. How we feeling today, man?
Good. This slate is absolutely insane, but it should be fun to talk about. Just a lot of moving pieces, a lot of guys with the flu, a lot of probably news breaking right before lock and throughout the night.
Okay, so let's do this. I want to cover everything. I usually always ask you, like, what are your first thoughts on this? But I think the bigger question today that you can answer now before we dive into each game individually is, what is the biggest injury news that we're currently waiting on throughout this slate?
Karl Anthony Towns is going to be actually, Karl Anthony Towns and Shabazz Napier are probably going to be the biggest issue because they're in the last game of the night. Obviously, if Towns is out, it opens up one of the better value plays in Gorgie Jang. Napier, if he's in, is one of the better value plays. If he's out, then you get more minutes for Teague and for Culver. So that is really, really big news that hopefully we get at a reasonable time. Beyond that, we still have a questionable Blake Griffin, which matters a lot. Jeremy Lamb is still questionable. That doesn't matter quite as much. I think Towns is the one that is really, really important.
Okay. And by the way, we already have most of the news on Washington. This is just absurd, Adam.
I mentioned it a couple times in the deep dive today. I don't even know how to confidently project rates at this point because we just don't have any sort of sample size of the entire Washington rotation being out of play.
Okay, so here's the thing. Like, Admiral Schofield's got to get 32 minutes, right?
Yeah, I have him at 30.
Okay. This is the first game. So, Washington and the New York Knicks. Right now, the total on this game is pretty high because both teams are bad. Both teams don't play quality defense. It's a 227 total, down from 234 and a half. That's a huge, that plummets. Open at 234.5, down to 227. Still a high total though. And the Knicks are 3.5-point favorites. So at this rate, at this rate, we have to first try and project the minutes for Washington and the number of guys that are on this roster. I went over all of it in depth on this morning's strategy show if you hung out with Ben Rassa and myself. So we'll have a different voice break down what they see in terms of the rotation today with Davis Bertans, Thomas Bryant, Rui Hachimura, Mo Wagner all out, Isaiah Thomas out, Jordan McRae still out. Everyone's out.
Yeah, the thing is, they're still not. I mean, they're obviously short on bodies, but it's more so that they're short on quality bodies than actual bodies. They signed Gary Payton. They called up Justin Robinson from the G League. So they still have 10 bodies here. I expect a 9-man rotation. That's what we had seen earlier in the year when they were more shorthanded than normal. So it's not one of those situations like we had with Golden State earlier this year where everyone just has to play 30-something minutes. But it's still a situation where you have more minutes going to the guys like Schofield, like you mentioned, like Troy Brown, most likely. Obviously, Beal and Smith will get theirs. So there are still obviously good plays to get to from this team.
So who do you like and what are your minute projections? That's really the biggest thing here. What are the minutes going to look like? Beal's going to play like 38-40, obviously, assuming Troy Brown probably gets 30 himself. Schofield 30-32. I would assume that Jan Mahimi gets more minutes than usual. Pacechniks, how much is he going to get? He's coming off a game where he played 22 minutes.
Yeah, and in the front court, I have Mahimi projected for 26. I have Pacechniks projected for 22. I have them splitting the 48 center minutes. Neither one stands out as a great value to me, but they're both guys that across 150 lineups, I think I'll probably get to a little bit just because they are cheap and because they'll need to play. I don't expect Schofield to be picking up minutes at the 5. I don't expect Troy Brown to be picking up minutes at the 5. So I think we're pretty much down to those two guys splitting 48 minutes, barring ungodly foul trouble or something like that. So how that's split up, obviously we'll see, and it probably in part depends on how they're playing. But I think 26 for Mahimi is a pretty good starting point there. I think I have Schofield in for 30 minutes. He's not particularly productive. He's averaged about 0.65 DraftKings points per minute this season. There's a lot of relatively cheap value, so he's another guy where I'm sure I'll have some, but it's not a core play for me. I have Troy Brown at 30 minutes, and I think he could reasonably play more. I think he's a case where it's going to depend a lot on how he's playing because we've seen Scott Brooks at various times this year where it looked like Troy Brown should get a lot of minutes, kind of yank him early because he wasn't playing well. But at the same time, they don't really have much talent on this team right now. So he's one of the more talented basketball players, and he has averaged 0.88 DraftKings points per minute. So I think he's a strong value. I think that Garrison Matthews picks up 20 to 22 minutes. I think that Gary Payton or Justin Robinson will probably play 12 to 14 minutes like Chris Chiozza was. So I think that the main priorities for me are Brown and then Beal and Smith, who are the two that I think are obviously locked into their roles and two of the better offensive players on the team. Beal, of course, should play 38 minutes. I have him projected for a 38% usage rate. He's played a very limited sample without these guys on the floor, but had a 39.4% usage rate. I think he's going to shoot a lot. I don't know how efficient he'll be without any other real scorers out there, but I think he's very clearly a top tournament play and cash play. And then Ish Smith should be a bit more productive than usual just because he's going to have to take on more of a scoring role.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ish Smith has got to be one of the priorities on this slate at his price. I've got to ask you, compared to to put it in context with 10 other games on this slate, what are you thinking in terms of prioritizing players like Schofield, like Smith? I know you like them context of the game and the team, but Troy Brown being another one, Bradley Beal, like how high up the list do you have them as values, point per dollar values on the slate overall?
I think I'll have a lot of Beal, Smith, and Brown. The one thing to keep in mind too is that the guard position is just absolutely stacked on this slate, both point guard and shooting guard. So that could potentially drive exposure down for me on Beal and Ish a little bit. It'll at the very least make it so if they're getting tons of ownership, I start pivoting to some other guys that I think are similar. But I think that, in cash or if we're just not really talking ownership, they're both two of the better guard options. I think Troy Brown's one of the better values at forward, which is nowhere near as strong a position as guard is.
Okay. On the other side, the Knicks might go a little bit overlooked. I don't think they will though, and I say that because they're not a very good basketball team, but they've got a matchup that was already good, and now it's fantastic. So coming into this game, Washington was one of the worst defenses, playing at one of the fastest paces in basketball. Now you're eliminating someone in Davis Bertans, who was one of the few guys kind of holding this team together in terms of them not getting absolutely run off the court every single time they played, and he's gone. So what are we doing with like underpriced guys like RJ Barrett? How are you approaching Elfrid Payton, whose minutes have kind of been all over the place? And like Mitchell Robinson, who if we could give him 30 minutes, I'm sure both of us would have considerable interest, but I have no idea what type of run he's going to get today.
Right. One piece of injury news we're waiting on here that is quietly important is that Taj Gibson is questionable. If he sits, that just helps to solidify minutes for Mitchell Robinson. I have Robinson projected for 28 minutes anyway, but if you take Gibson out, I think that it's even easier for him to get there, and he potentially could play some more. So that's something to keep in mind. But for the Knicks in general, I think that they're a little bit underpriced because we're seeing price points on this team that factor in how often they get blown out. And it's like the salaries are kind of set for their average minutes projections as opposed to what they can play in these competitive games. And it would be pretty surprising if Washington blows out the Knicks without 5 guys from their main rotation. It would be surprising if the Knicks blow out Washington because they're the Knicks. So I expect this to be a competitive game. And that means that instead of 29 to 30 minutes for Julius Randle, like he's been averaging because of these blowouts, I expect 33, 34 minutes from him. I expect around 30 minutes from Elfrid Payton, if not more. We haven't seen what Payton's minutes actually look like in a competitive game. So I think that there's a really wide range of outcomes for him. I expect 33, 34 minutes for Barrett. Marcus Morris is doubtful, so that opens up more usage as well. He's been about a 25% usage guy since the coaching change. So that gives more usage to Randall, gives more usage to Barrett and Payton, and makes them even more appealing.
Yeah, it really does. Just the game in general has a ton of interest, a lot of scoring, not a lot of defense. Once we get to the late games, it starts opening up a little bit more, but there are a bunch of games that we're going to talk about in some of these early spots that really aren't that appealing. Let's move it on to would you agree with that, by the way?
Yeah. One more thing to point out from the Knicks is that I expect Kevin Knox to start. I have him in for 24 to 26 minutes. He's played 176 minutes with Randall on and Morris off this year, 21.7% usage, 0.91 DraftKings points per minute. Obviously a good matchup. So I think that he's a strong point per dollar option, even though he's not very good.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with him. I mean, Marcus Morris was playing huge minutes, less recently, but you also saw a bunch of blowouts, so I'm not sure how much that impacted him. But in competitive games, he had been playing up around 35 minutes at times, which is pretty significant. Let's talk about the Pacers and the Toronto Raptors. Indiana here, pretty hefty favorites with the Raptors dealing with so many injuries. Right now, you've got the Raptors 6.5-point dogs on the road, 211.5 over under here. We could start with Indiana, and I guess the first order of business is Domantas Sabonis, but he does expect to play here. They're playing their second of a back-to-back, coming off that road loss, beatdown really at the hands of the Milwaukee Bucks. Before we try and break down this Toronto team, let's take a look at the Pacers. Personally, there isn't a lot here that I have a ton of interest in. If Sabonis were to sit, that would make things a whole lot different. Jeremy Lamb that's at least comes into play, and it might make some changes here. But right now, if both are in, then I don't know how much interest I have in this team.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same for me. I think that Sabonis is my favorite play from Indiana because, for one, he's obviously really good. But two, the forward positions today are just nowhere near as deep as the guard positions. So while I think that like $7,000 for Brogdon on DraftKings is a good price point, there are just so many underpriced guards that it's hard to prioritize him. Whereas at forward, Randall I think is a priority for me, but outside of that, it's not a ton of guys that really jump off the page. It's more like guys that are good but not super exciting plays. And I think Sabonis is one of those guys. The salary is affordable. He's averaging 34 minutes per game over the last month. His rates don't really change regardless of who is on or off the floor. So he's the one guy I like the most from Indiana.
Okay. With Toronto, we know that they're dealing with a bunch of guys who are out indefinitely. Pascal Siakam, uh, Marc Gasol, Norman Powell, Fred VanVleet is back and healthy. Kyle Lowry's playing 100 minutes per game. And the last game we saw the bench bring them back from a 30-point deficit in the third quarter. And Nick Nurse stuck with those guys, rightfully so, right? But they Kyle Lowry was out there the whole time. Aside from that, you saw a bunch of these guys like Ibaka and Fred VanVleet get less minutes than they normally would. OG Anunoby also played fewer than 30. They're playing their second of a back-to-back, though, so that might be a good thing for today. But I guess the big question is, are we looking at pricing here as, they're all pretty reasonably priced on draft? I think FanDuel's a little bit more favorable, but are these price points at a level where you say, all right, they're just okay plays now, whereas before when all these injuries originally happened, they were a lot more appealing?
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. And on top of the salaries coming up, you just got a really, really tough spot.
Yeah.
Good Indiana defense, a slow Indiana team, only a 102 team total for Toronto. Not really the spot where you want to be dealing with rising salaries. I think that you mentioned it. The game flow yesterday was really weird. So definitely be careful, just looking at how many minutes guys played. I think it's more important to look at how the rotations went. For example, Chris Boucher played 24 minutes yesterday, but Serge Ibaka only played 24 minutes. So you were still getting 48 minutes from those two. That makes it really
absolutely crushes when he gets minutes, though. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah. It's terrible. I was really hoping he would be more expensive today just because I'm projecting him for 16 minutes. But if something happens, whether it's a blowout or Ibaka foul trouble or something like that, he can absolutely break a slate if he just gets a few extra minutes. So, he's definitely a good point per minute player. But it's just kind of important to keep the rotations in mind because you don't want to say like, oh, well, Ibaka is going to play 32 and Boucher is going to play 20 or 24 or something because we haven't seen them run anything close to that. So I have Ibaka at 32 minutes. I have Lowry at 38. Lowry's the only guy really standing out for me just because he does take on a bigger role without Siakam. He does play monster minutes and the price tag is still reasonably affordable.
So is there anything you really like from either side?
Lowry and Sabonis, but I like them, but there's still other guys, especially in the case of Lowry at guard, that I like more.
Okay. So, Orlando and Chicago to me is actually less appealing than the last game we talk about. And you may have a different opinion because some of the salaries on some of these guys are pretty friendly. Like Vooch I like, just to get that out of the way quickly. I do like Nikola Vucevic today, but in a vacuum, I could say, oh, well, I like the price on Aaron Gordon. I like the price on Jonathan Isaac. I just don't know how they stack up against, a lot of other players on a really big slate with a slate low 207 over under. Both teams, very low implied totals. Not to say that always matters, but it just feels like while we're getting value, you're sacrificing an actual good game to play them at a discount. What are your thoughts on the Magic here?
I agree with you. You mentioned Vooch, and that's really the only play that I feel good about from this game. He's obviously a good rebounder. He's I think ninth in total rebounds this year. Chicago's given up the third most rebounds per game, but Chicago's been a good team defensively. Over the last month, a top 10 defensive rating. They don't play at a particularly fast pace. They don't play slow either, but it's not like it's a spot where you're really making up for the lack of efficiency with extra possessions. So I think it sets up as a good spot for Vooch, but beyond him, it's really tough for me to get to anything.
Alex Bush, $20 super chat. Thanks for all the great advice and content. I made over $1,000 in profit last week. Congrats, man. That is awesome to hear. I love it, and we appreciate that very much so. Keep it up, dude. What about the Chicago side of the ball? It's equally ugly.
Yeah, like Zach LaVine's the most appealing to me, I guess, but there's just so many guards that I think are in great spots and underpriced today that it's not a priority for me. Orlando's it's a slow game, a quality defensive team. If you wanted to like throw a dart at a really cheap Thaddeus Young, that's fine. But 11 game slate, tons of good plays, not a whole lot from this game.
Okay. Yeah, I don't mind moving on. I mean, I want to spend time on some of these good games, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
But one thing, so Chicago actually ran a tighter rotation last game than normal. they were giving more minutes to the starters. But the thing is, Boylan spent most of the season not doing that. So I don't want to read too much into it and start projecting, 34 for Dunn and 38 for Satoransky or anything.
Yeah, and by the way, you may have mentioned this a little while ago. I mentioned it to Ben today too, though, that over the last 30 days, Chicago's playing really solid defense. On the season, they have the ninth best defensive rating in the league, and both teams are playing at a pretty slow pace. Chicago, middle of the road, but Orlando plays at a crawling pace, and they have a 107 defensive rating. That ranks 12th in basketball. The Chicago Bulls have a 105 defensive rating. If you were to look at it over the last month, though, I mean,
they're like sixth.
They've been really, really good defensively. Let's see, they rank fifth in the league. They're sandwiched in between the Sixers at fourth and the Celtics at sixth. It's really good. So keep that in mind when you're looking at some of the cheap players. I think they're cheap for a reason, Adam.
Yeah, I agree. And there's just a lot of plays on this slate, whether it's because of injury or matchup or whatever, where guys are really underpriced. And I just don't think that's the case with much of anything in this game, with maybe the exception of Vooch.
Okay. Another super chat. David Hanna, Merry Christmas. Engelman wins 10K and decides not to show up for work. Did he win 10K?
No, I had not heard that. But now we know how he got the flu.
Yeah, I had no idea. Thanks a lot, Dave. Yeah, I had no idea. I guess, did he? I guess over the weekend, maybe?
I guess. I don't know.
Nice.
He must really be sick, because normally I hear about that.
Exactly. Cleveland, Atlanta. All right, well, this one is, I don't know how to approach it. I mean, Trae Young is more expensive than James Harden on DraftKings. That's the first thing that needs to be mentioned, Adam.
Yeah, and so like 11,200 for Young, it's obviously overpriced, but it's not even like he can't beat that salary. The reason why I won't get to Young on DraftKings is just because of the opportunity cost, even more so than the real cost. Like it's just impossible for me to be paying $3,000 more for Young than for Dame, or 5,000 more than McCollum, 2,000 more than Beal, more than Harden. So yeah, it's a good job being proactive, I guess, but kind of just takes him completely off the board for me.
All right, so looking at the rest of this game, though, we'll start with Cleveland. 229.5 over under on the game. Cleveland's a 1-point favorite. We'll get to John Collins and everything on the Atlanta side, but first get this Cleveland Cavs team out of the way. What are you thinking about the Cavs, if anything, here? Like, Kevin Love played 28 minutes last game in what was a competitive one. That concerns me a little bit. If I could give him 30 plus minutes, I might have some interest against Atlanta, but I don't know how to approach Cleveland. And generally when that's the case, I won't approach them at all, because we had a question earlier this morning about someone like Darius Garland. I mean, Darius Garland's ceiling is 35 fantasy points. Jordan Clarkson's price is up coming off a really big game, but you can't lock in 30 minutes for him ever. And now he's at 5,500. Tristan Thompson, could you make an argument there? I think it's possible. And we'll also keep an eye on Larry Nance's status. He remains questionable, but he hadn't really been playing minutes anyway. So what are your thoughts on the Cavs?
I think Thompson's the best play from Cleveland. The problem is that center is a good position today, but I think it sets up as a really good matchup for him. Atlanta's allowed the second most offensive rebounds per game this season. I think it's third most. It's second or third. Thompson is second or third in offensive rebounds per game among centers, or among all players. So I think that for a player that, obviously isn't super involved in the offense as far as having plays run for him, a lot of his offense does come on offensive rebounds and putbacks, and Atlanta gives up plenty of that. Fast-paced game, a bad defense, reasonable price tag on Thompson, and he's another one of these guys, kind of like we mentioned with the Knicks, where his average minutes per game is relatively low, but if you look at competitive games, you're getting 32, 33, 34 minutes. So I think he's a good play. I think he's cheap. I'm fine taking some shots at Kevin Love because his price tag is really cheap, especially on FanDuel. He's only 6,500 over there, and Ford's not a particularly great position. But I have the same concerns that you do, and it's that if he's his average minutes over the last month are about 28. Even in their last game, which was competitive, he played about 28 minutes. So there's no guarantee that he's playing 30 plus minutes, even if this game is competitive.
Right. That's my concern as well. And then the rest of Cavs are the Cleveland Cavs. I mean,
right.
I don't usually, and the only reason I'm spending any time here is because usually against Atlanta, regardless of who they are, we have some interest, right?
Yeah, I think also Clarkson's salary on DraftKings jumped all the way to 5,500.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, he's like 45 or 4,600 on FanDuel, so that's still fine. On DraftKings, $3,700 Kevin Porter. I have him projected for 22 minutes, but in this matchup, it's a spot where you could get him at really low ownership and he could have a good game. Also, if Nance is out, I think Porter benefits.
Okay. So the Atlanta side, Trae Young's egregiously expensive. Even on FanDuel, I guess he's all right on FanDuel, but
He's fine on FanDuel.
Yeah, we'll get to some other plays that are also pretty appealing. I thought he was 11-3. He's 10-3 on FanDuel, so I really don't have an issue with that. And then on Yahoo, you've got him coming in at 47. Harden's 59, but I mean, seriously, I don't care what the matchup is. Anytime you're more expensive than James Harden as Trae Young, I just can't do it. Even if it's like, oh, well, what about the ownership?
Right. And that's where I'm at too. Like he's clearly not going to be owned. But the problem for me is you're not just comparing him to like James Harden. You're not saying, oh, Trae Young beats James Harden X% of the time and it's worth it at the ownership, because the problem is that you also have all these other guys, Fox, Payton, Ish, Lowry, at various price points throughout the position, that it's just such a low probability outcome that Trae Young is like the best play when you factor in what it costs you to get to him. So, on FanDuel, I think he's fine. I still have 8 or 9 point guards as better plays at their respective salaries, but I have him as a quality play still. But on DraftKings, I just can't get there.
What about the rest of this team with John Collins back from serving his 25-game suspension?
Yeah, Collins is about the only other thing that's interesting to me. He's really affordable on DraftKings. On FanDuel. He's fine on DraftKings too, about the same price as FanDuel. They said he's not on a minutes limit. Lloyd Pierce had mentioned that Collins is just the freshest guy on the team now, and joked that he was going to run him out for 48 minutes because of the suspension. But I have him in for 34 minutes. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't play his normal run. He's greater than a 1 fantasy point per minute player. I think he's a good play.
Okay.
I would still prefer like Julius Randle though.
Do you have anything else from this game?
Nope.
Yeah, Herter's playing more minutes, but his usage is already trending down. Now Collins comes back, and his prices come up. So
yeah, I'm a little concerned about the minutes with Collins back too, just because it's obviously one more guy in the rotation that's playing a lot of minutes. I have Herter at 32 minutes here. He played 36 last game. It's more of a crunch now on who loses minutes between Herter, Hunter, Reddish, or do they all kind of flatten out?
Larry Nance was just ruled out. Does that do anything?
Yeah, it gives Kevin Porter more minutes most likely.
Yeah, I would give him, but I'm not giving him all of Nance's minutes. Maybe like
no
7 or 8 more minutes.
I wasn't even going that
5.
Much. Yeah, I was gonna go probably like 4. Like I'm probably gonna go from like 22 to 26 on Porter. I guess McKinney probably gets in the rotation, and Chetty probably picks up a few minutes.
Yeah, McKinney probably gets like 7 or 8. That would
right. So I had Nance at 18 minutes. Yeah, so I have Love at 30. I have Nance at 18. I'm going to go from 26 to 30 on Chetty. I'm going to go from 22 to 26 on Porter. So I have 10 minutes to give to McKinney.
So the fantasy gods giveth, the fantasy gods taketh away. Jeremy Lamb is playing, and now Malcolm Brogdon is a game-time decision with a groin injury.
God, this feels like March.
Yeah, it really does. Domantas Sabonis available to play. You guys all know how I feel about that. I just say he's playing,
right,
or he isn't. Available to play was the same shit we saw with Andre Drummond last week, where Adam, he was available to play and never saw the court.
Right. I don't mind it as much with the starters, because when they're like available to play and then the clear starter doesn't start, it's just like, okay, I'll get off of him. I hate it when it's like the backup that plays 30 minutes a game and you just have to wait and pray that he can go on the floor.
Oh, yeah. The first 8 minutes of the game, you're on pins and needles, just waiting to see if he gets in.
Yeah, you're like waiting for them to show him on the sideline with like a rag over his head or something.
Exactly. Yeah. Detroit and Philly. Speaking of Who the hell knows what's going to happen? Joel Embiid is questionable in this game between the Pistons and the Sixers. It's a low total game as it should be, 215.5. Sixers 6.5 point favorite. They're still 6.5 point favorites. So I think that would suggest that Embiid probably, with this game being on the road, probably is going to play. But you have a theory about Joel Embiid today.
Yeah, he's scared of Andre Drummond. Um,
I don't think that's true. But
no, I mean, I don't either. It's just something that like sticks in my head that I remember happening because there was a game, I don't know, last year or the year before where they like really got into it, or a couple of games. And then it was like Embiid sat the next game or something, and then I think he played one. Drummond sat their preseason game this year. Embiid sat the first game this year that they played. So he sat 2 out of the last 3, and then now he has the flu.
you know what? You might not be wrong. He's got no problem going after Cat, right?
Right, right.
Because Jimmy Butler's like, yo, listen, he's a bitch. You know,
Yeah.
you
But yeah,
can take him.
If Embiid's in, I think he's fine, but still not a priority for me when you have so many good mid-range centers on this slate. That's kind of a theme for this slate for me, is that I think the mid-range pricing is a lot softer than the top-end pricing. So it's a slate where I think I'll probably end up getting a couple more of those guys in at the expense of guys like Embiid. But if Embiid's out, if Embiid's in, I think he's the most interesting Sixer, but none of them are that appealing to me. If he's out, then obviously they all become more appealing because you get more usage, you get more minutes at the 5 or you get all the minutes at the 5 for Horford. So that would make them better plays.
By the way, seeing some conversation about Kyle O'Quinn. Correct me if I'm wrong, but last time Embiid was out, I don't think O'Quinn played more than like 5 minutes.
So I'm not sure how much he played last time, but I know it's the backup center.
Say that again.
If that. He's been. I don't know exactly how much he played the last time Embiid sat, but I know he's just been at most the backup center when Embiid sits.
Right. Yeah.
It's not like they're replacing him with O'Quinn.
Well, what happened the one time was Horford moved over to the 5 and Harris to the 4, right?
Right.
But that was also when you had Matisse Thybulle healthy. He's not healthy.
There was another one where Scott started.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Yep.
Scott started 2 of them in a row, and I don't know how this is going to go. What I would say though is, O'Quinn's in a competitive game, the maximum amount of minutes O'Quinn plays is, I don't know, 16.
Yep.
Right?
They're not. The thing is, they're not going with like a closing lineup or a starting lineup or a lineup at very many points in the middle of the game where it's like Harris at the 3, Horford at the 4, O'Quinn at the 5. Horford's the center. O'Quinn backs him up. That's it.
Right. I'm trying to find. You know what? Go hit me with some Detroit analysis here while I pull a couple things up. Blake Griffin though currently questionable. Andre Drummond's over the avocado catastrophe in Mexico City, so he's good to go. Talk to me about how this one plays out for you. Oh, by the way, Christian Wood is probable. Luke Kennard is out of this one, and that one kind of came out of nowhere. So he's sidelined. Derrick Rose was rested. He is going to play. A ton of injury designations. Bruce Brown is questionable with bilateral calf soreness. Yeah, of course. He hasn't missed a game this season, but I don't know if he's going to play. What does that do for Langston Galloway? This is what we would call a shit show, Adam.
Yes, it is, and I'm really glad they're playing the Sixers, because if they were playing like the Wizards or something, and you had to like actually figure all this stuff out. So, also, it's a 7:00 game, which is nice. But if everyone's in, I really have no interest in anything. If Griffin is out, then obviously Keith's minutes go up. He's still reasonably priced. He's whatever. It's still a bad matchup. Drummond is better if Griffin's out, but it's not a great matchup, whether it's Embiid or Horford at the 5. And again, he's just more expensive than a lot of the other centers we'll talk about. If Brown's out, then normally I would say, Derrick Rose plays more minutes, but it's Derrick Rose, so he probably doesn't. You probably get more minutes if he's out for Tim Frazier, who played really well last game. But I don't think I would go to too much Tim Frazier, even though he's really cheap. He played 28 minutes last game, but that was pretty weird. It's a lot of moving pieces, and unless multiple guys get ruled out, it probably isn't a spot that I'm really getting to regardless.
Okay, so I pulled something up. We'll talk about the Philly side.
Griffin on track to play.
He is on track to play. Okay, so that makes it actually even easier, if you ask me.
Embiid, game time decision.
Oh, wonderful.
So that means we get to just scour Twitter for pictures of him stretching on the sideline.
And Elfrid Payton remains in the starting lineup. So Matisse Thybulle's out. It's not a big deal. 14, 18 minutes a game goes to what? Like Korkmaz, maybe Ennis gets a little bit more. But the game I was looking for was the 15th of December. It was going up against the Brooklyn Nets, and it wasn't the second of a back-to-back, but Embiid was out, and I think there was somebody else out as well. I can't remember who it was, but Embiid sat. So check this out. Horford, and they got blown out, by the way. They got smoked by the Nets at the Rogers Center. So Horford, first 3 rotations, he played 10 in the first quarter, then 7.5. So you're looking at like almost 18 minutes in the first half. And then he played about 10 in the third quarter. And then he never came back out. Well, Mike Scott started that game alongside Richardson, Harris, Simmons, and Horford. Kyle O'Quinn played 5 minutes, and they all came in mop-up duty the final 4 minutes and 52 seconds of this game. And you know why? The reason for that is Norvel Pelle. Norvel Pelle has basically overtaken Kyle O'Quinn in not every game, but I would say there's a very good chance that the backup minutes go to Norvel Pelle today, or at least they split them where it's like 7-7 or something really ugly, and Kyle O'Quinn might not see the court at all, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's a really good call. I'd forgotten about Pell. I'd even kind of made a note earlier to remind myself, and then I forgot. So yeah, really good call there.
Not to say I like Norvel Pelle that much, but
no. But
if Norvel Pelle played 20 minutes, though, that could be very interesting. This dude blocks shots at a ridiculous clip. Like, ridiculous clip. Every time he's out there, I swear, he's blocking at least 3 shots. It's insane.
The Matisse Thybulle of blocks.
Yeah, exactly. He's got a block rate of 12%.
Wow.
That's insane. I know he's only played like 6 games, but he just always seems to block shots. He's very good at that. But yeah, Kyle O'Quinn might not see the floor. Anyway, do you want to talk about anything else with the Sixers?
No, I don't.
Okay. Miami, Utah, and we can circle. If Embiid plays, do you have any interest there?
No.
All right, so we don't even have to circle back.
If he's out, it's where I start having some interest.
Correct. Yeah, if he's in, we're not going to talk much about that, but I don't think we're going to know. That's why Lie Before Lock, Emac, and is it? I don't think it's Eddie, right? It's Spags today. Yeah, Spags and Emac will cover you. Josh is out. He's got the sniffles. Let's talk about the next game here, which is also potentially more unappealing than all of them. Miami and Utah. Dude, this is what I meant by some of these middle of the slate games, even the 7 p.m. games. 213.5 total. Miami 4.5 point favorites at home. 109 implied for them. 104.5 for Utah. The big thing for me is that I don't think Butler should ever be 8,100 on DraftKings. Like that's kind of where I start and finish with Miami. What about you?
Yeah, I agree with that. Utah, has been playing faster. They're not great defensively, but the thing for me is that Goran Dragic being back just flattens out minutes for a lot of guys. I have Kendrick Nunn back at 30. I have Dragic and Hero and Jones all at 24 minutes. Butler's the one that stands out. I agree with you. Bam Adebayo has obviously been great and playing huge minutes, but I don't feel like I need it's really tough for me to get to him when he's more expensive than guys like Vooch and Whiteside and Thompson, who I really like, and not that much less expensive than guys like Jokic. So Butler, I think, not a priority for me, but the best play from Miami.
Okay. Yeah, he's not a priority. He is still at this price, though, 100% in play. And
for sure.
He's just too good of a player he's too good of a player to overlook at 8,100. And that's all it comes down to for me, because Butler can go and score 10 points and still find a way to get you 50. And I'm not saying you're going to get that from him often. And he's actually been scoring a lot. I'd venture to say that he's averaging a career high in points this year, but maybe I'm off. But if you had to guess, would you say he's averaging a career high in points or no?
Probably.
Okay. Yeah, we're both wrong. He's not. But he's averaging 20 a game. I guess that's just because the last 2 years he averaged 18 and 18. 2016 with Chicago, he averaged 23.9. So, all right, definitely wrong there. But it doesn't matter because all of his other numbers are insane. He's giving you a 30% assist rate, double-digit rebound rate, 3% steal rate, 2% block rate. Combine all of that, and you get some really good stuff. What about the Utah side with Mike Conley continuing to sit?
Not a whole lot there for me either. Conley being out doesn't really matter that much anymore because prices have moved on everybody. I don't really have anything.
Nothing. All right.
Nothing.
And Goran Dragic being back definitely takes all of the shine off of somebody like Kendrick Nunn or Tyler Hero anyway. So,
Yep, agreed.
all right.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to go to anything from Utah, I think Mitchell's the most interesting. But like Gobert is up to 9K. Not a good spot. I like the late games a lot more, and then I like bits and pieces of these other games more.
John Cotter, $5 super chat. Merry Christmas, guys. Great show. Merry Christmas to you too, John. We appreciate you, brother. Appreciate all you guys supporting the show throughout the year. Let's keep moving and talk about, well, we got 5 games to go. I think we've gotten through most of the bad ones. We're going to start getting into the good stuff in a second. I should tell you though that the sign up code Deeper Dive, promo code Deeper Dive, one word, gets you 50% off your first week of Awesemo Plus membership. All access, everything. You got to get the Fantasy Cruncher add-on, but ownership projections, player projections, the premium Slack, the top stack tool, the boom or bust tool, which is great to use for NBA. All of the articles, our guys spend a ton of time writing these premium articles. The lineup builder for those of you that are playing not 150, but maybe 1 or 3 or 5 lineups each day, super helpful, and a lot more. But we'll run out of time talking about it. Go to awesemo.com/join and click begin membership. We'll ask you what type of player you are. Try and cater your subscription to your needs, to what type of player and what you're willing to spend, really, and what you think you need, so you're not getting too much or too little. You're not overwhelmed or underwhelmed. And if you scroll to the bottom of that page, you'll see videos on all of our top tools, our best and most popular ones that were developed and used every day by the man, Alex Baker, Awesemo himself. But if you use that sign-up code Deeper Dive, one word, it'll get you 50% off your first month of Awesemo Plus All Access Platinum membership. You just can't get better than that. Sorry, first half off your first week. You can't outdo that. We'll see you over there. Say what's up in the Slack chat when you do. We'll show you around Memphis, San Antonio. So very, very odd. What just happened?
Stanley Johnson went from doubtful to probable. Not that it matters, but I just thought it was funny.
Sorry, I must have said something because Alexa's talking shit over here. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why I have these things in my house, but I figure I'm being spied on already. What's the difference? They can get you through your TV, Adam. They'll get you through your phone.
Yeah, I mean, definitely have to put tape over the camera.
Well, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. No, of course not.
That's definitely overboard.
What's that?
I said that's definitely overboard.
Yeah, exactly. Only weirdos would do that. Did you not see on the news that lady that got her Ring doorbell hacked? She had an inside Ring camera in the baby's room, like in the nursery, and some guy hacks it and he starts telling her kids, hey, sit down and shut up and all this
No, I
crazy
did not see
stuff.
that.
And then to prove that he knew where she was, ordered Papa John's pizza to her house.
No, I didn't see that, but that's creepy and also a nice gesture at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. 2FA, man. 2-factor authentication. You got to. You got to do that stuff. You'd be crazy not to. No one's getting in when you do that. But yeah, it's safe to say she was a little bit scared. Someone spying on her bait. Oh my God, dude. It's just wild shit. But anyway, yeah, I agree. SJM, fade Alexa. But I still got him because it makes my life easier for the time being. And simplicity is key in this world. All right, let's talk about Memphis and San Antonio. Glenn Robinson is out.
I'm really surprised we got that now, but that's helpful.
Yeah. Sorry, what were you saying about Stanley Johnson, by the way? I was listening to Alexa.
It doesn't matter for DFS, but he was listed as doubtful, and now he's probable.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those days, right? In all seriousness.
Yeah, I think he's the second one today to go from doubtful to probable. I think Christian Wood did also.
It's just one of those days. Matthew Rappaport, 2 favorite centers on DraftKings. We'll get to that. We'll get to
Yeah,
that.
so we haven't gotten to either of them yet.
Like exactly. We haven't gotten to those games. Aaron Warrenham called me a paranoid freak. That's fair enough. No, I'm normal, man. Enough at least. So San Antonio is not a good team this year, and I think to some there's still this idea that they're okay. They're not. Like it's a pretty rough team. Memphis, on the other hand, plays at a fast pace, and I shouldn't say on the other hand, they are bad. I mean, Memphis is also a bad basketball team, but I've got to say, Ja Morant is relatively appealing to me today with 226 over under. Should be a high scoring game between two teams that don't play a lot of defense. What are your thoughts on Ja Morant here? Assuming he plays, I don't know. I got him playing 30 plus, and if that's the case, I definitely have interest.
Yeah, I have interest. It's just that I have a hard time prioritizing him when you have all these other guards. Like even factoring in price, how am I getting Morant ahead of Harden, Beal,
Sure.
Westbrook, Lowry?
Sure.
One of the Minnesota point guards, whether it's Napier or Teague, Dame, McCollum. Like it gets really, really tough for me. So on one hand, that means his ownership should be low. On the other hand, that means I probably won't have tons of exposure to him either, even though, I do think he's obviously really good. His usage has been down since he came back from injury too. I don't want to read too much into that, but I think it is, at least somewhat concerning that it's down a lot from where it was earlier in the year.
For sure. Sorry, these comments are getting interesting. DFS Marky says, Adam, be on the dark net. Hey, the dark net's a scary place to be. Go watch the soup video and get back to me. Anyway, I forget what it's called. Something soup. It's scary as hell. It's just the most freaky thing ever. You ever go on the dark web?
No, I have no idea what you're even talking about right now.
Oh, you don't know what that is? Really?
I mean, I don't know what the video that you're talking about.
The deep web? You know what the deep web is?
Yeah, I don't know the video that you're talking about.
Okay. It's some weird people in these costumes making some guy eat soup with a big spoon. It's creepy, man. Anything else from Memphis that you like?
Yeah, so we're waiting on Valanciunas news. If he's out, I think Jackson gets a bump. Brandon Clark obviously gets a bump, and then you get usage bumps for guys like Ja Morant and Dylan Brooks. Not enough to make any of them priorities for me, but I would like them a little bit more if Valanciunas is out. If Valanciunas is in, then I'm less interested in the team as a whole.
Blank room soup. Thank you, Josh. I knew we'd have somebody that would have this. I knew it. Look up blank room soup. Scare the hell out of you. Do you want to talk about the San Antonio side? I'm actually curious to get your take on DeJounte Murray, because Ben and I guess I don't want to say I had a disagreement, but kind of saw it a little bit differently in terms of minute projections. I'm giving him 28 today. I think there's upside for more. Against Brooklyn, Patty Mills got really hot off the bench. Against the Clippers, it was a blowout. So he had played 31 and 29 before that. I think if Patty Mills doesn't go off, DeJounte Murray probably gets to 30 again. So I don't mind giving him 28 today against
31 was overtime.
Sorry?
31 was overtime.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so he had 26 in that one, and then 29?
Yeah.
And then, that's why 28 I don't think is crazy. But what are you giving him today?
27.
27? Any interest in DeJounte Murray? Any interest in a discounted DeRozan? He's been bad, but
yeah.
Go ahead.
Not priorities for me, but some interest just because the pricing is appealing. The matchup against Memphis is appealing. DeJounte Murray is greater than a fantasy point per minute guy. It's not, it's not guys I'm getting to a ton of, but I do think that they're affordably priced.
Okay. Top options from this team?
DeRozan, Murray, Aldridge, as always in that order.
Okay. Well, 4 to go. Phoenix and Denver. Right now, this game's got another one with a pretty low total. Again, that doesn't always mean much, but 217.5. Nuggets 3.5 point favorites on the road. Ricky Rubio is going to play. He's not even, I don't think even on the injury report anymore. He's not. He's officially playing. But then you've got DeAndre Ayton, who came back for a game, and now he's out for a game with that ailing ankle. Frank Kaminsky will play as well. So what are your thoughts on Phoenix? Do you think Baines gets back to significant minutes here again? Or does Kaminsky take some of that opportunity away from him? I mean, I don't know what to make of the front court right now. Baines is reasonably priced, but it's hard to project his minutes. What are you giving him today?
I have him at 28. He played 26 or 27 2 games ago. And
Sorry, we got the Wizards lineup.
Yeah.
Smith, Beal, Bonga, Schofield, and Mahimi, which is what I expected it to be.
Yeah, same here. So as far as Baines, I think the minutes are there. He played 26 or 27, and then he played 32. The matchup sucks, but the pricing's really nice. He hasn't been great his last couple of games, but for the season, he's played 233 minutes alongside Booker and Rubio. He's averaged 1.2 points per minute, DraftKings points per minute. He rebounds, he picks up assists, he's got a 20+% usage rate. I have him projected well below 1.2 points per minute here, but at his salary, it's still a good point per dollar option. He stands out as the top guy for me from Phoenix.
Yeah, I think so. Laffy looks like he just got off the Bang Bros bus. That I've heard a lot. That's one that I haven't heard yet. And by the way, all of you guys saying I'm crazy, go on YouTube. We're on it after the show and just type in blank room soup. And then when you see me after the break for Christmas, as always, just say, Laffy, you were right. That is some wild stuff. All right? That's all I'm saying. Did any of you guys watch the video I told you to watch on Amazon Prime about the dude getting his leg blown out from an electricity surge when he touched a dead bear? I don't think so. If you did, I would have heard from you, and you would have been like, man, he's on to some good stuff here, and I got to start following his recommendations. All right. What else for Phoenix?
That's mostly it. Dario Saric is really cheap. He played like 18 minutes last game for I don't know what reason other than probably because I rostered a lot of him. He normally, though, is playing like 32, 34 minutes. It's a terrible matchup, but he's cheap. I think you can get to some of him. I don't really want to pay up for the Rubio Booker guys, though, because it's just such an unappealing matchup, and there are so many guard options.
Okay. What about Denver?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of appealing options here. Obviously, you run into kind of playing time issues with these guys because they all have quality backups, but Jokic has been playing better recently. The minutes have come down a little bit since Millsap came back, which I think was to be expected when Plumlee's back to only playing backup center minutes. But still, if you're going to get 32 or 33 minutes from Jokic, it's a reasonable spot. Baines is better defensively than Kaminsky or Ayton, so that's not great for Jokic, but I still think that the price tag's affordable enough. And then Paul Millsap is only 4,200 on DraftKings. Obviously, you have the issue of him and Jeremy Grant are splitting 48 minutes. Sometimes Grant plays more, sometimes Grant plays less. I have it split at 25-23 here. I have Millsap projected for basically 6x on DraftKings, so pretty good value there.
Okay. Flavo, here's a good one. If you ever find yourself doubting your sexuality, it's okay because Laffy does too. That's good. Do I look like someone that doubts my sexuality? Come on now. You can come at me for a lot. That's not one of them, fella. I don't really like the majority of this game. The next one, though, we got a ton to talk about. Portland and New Orleans. There's already a lot of talk in chat about Damian Lillard, as there should be. We'll get to him in a moment. I did want to let you know the free content on the site today. Awesomo's game plan live stream, NFL Showdown ownership, and NHL ownership projections. So all of that free at awesemo.com today. Check that out if you haven't done so yet. Portland and New Orleans, Hassan Whiteside's been a stud. And how long have we just been screaming for him to get the minutes? Because if Whiteside starts getting consistent big run, he's going to be a dominant fantasy producer. It's truly amazing to me, Adam, that his price has come down below 8K on DraftKings in a matchup with the New Orleans Pelicans today.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when I wrote the deep dive because I still have like mental biases against Whiteside, I think from his time in Miami. And it's always, to me, it feels like he's like not safe or he's like risky. But then it was like, he's below 8K and he's averaging 1.5 points per minute, playing like 32 plus minutes in competitive games. He's in a good matchup against New Orleans. he's my favorite center on the slate. There's no,
Absolutely.
yeah,
That price is nuts.
there's no reason for me not to like him. Yeah, and with or without Anthony, like I don't think it matters. He's playing incredibly well. He's getting more minutes. He's in a good spot against the Pels. There's nothing I don't like.
And DFS Marky, the reason I read that stuff, because who would I be if I just ignore all the bad comments and only read the good comments? You know what I mean? Not doing anybody any good if that's the case. Damian Lillard, and by the way, I'm with you on Whiteside. When someone asked us earlier, like, who are our top centers, like you just said, we didn't get to either of them yet. This is one of them. Now, just to be clear, on DraftKings, he's 7,900, which is absurd. On FanDuel, he's $9K, and he's $40 on Yahoo. I would assume you'll play him everywhere, but there's definitely a priority status on DraftKings, right?
Yeah, but I think he's fine anyway.
Everywhere. Yep. What about Lillard? 8,300. His salary has come down along with his production, but he appears to be bouncing back a little bit. You know that's going to happen for a guy like him. A near 30% usage player, near 30% assist rate, playing upwards of 38 minutes in competitive games, getting up 20-plus shots on most nights. You knew that the tide was going to turn on Damian Lillard. And I feel like here's another spot where he can absolutely exploit it against the Pels.
He was the cover boy for the Deep Dive article today.
There it is. If anyone is wondering what that means, he was the featured image on Adam's premium article to be found at awesomemode.com.
Yeah, absolutely love him here. His price tag is 8,300 on DraftKings, which regardless of matchup is really cheap for someone that plays 37 plus minutes in competitive games. Carmelo Anthony's questionable. I don't think it matters, but either way, Lillard's a great option. If Melo's out, it's just even more usage for him. But since Melo joined the team, Terry Stotts has been staggering Lillard and McCollum, which gives Lillard very, very productive minutes when he's on the floor without either of those guys. And then in terms of the actual matchup, it's really good for Lillard against the Pelicans team that plays at a fast pace. They're 25th in defensive rating over the last month, 8th in pace. But also Lillard is 3rd in the NBA in pick and roll possessions per game. He ranks in the 93rd percentile in pick and roll efficiency. The Pelicans have allowed the 3rd most points per possession and 2nd highest effective field goal percentage to pick and roll ball handlers this year. So you're getting huge minutes. You're getting a fast-paced game. You're getting an overall inefficient defense. And then you're also getting a defense that can't defend what Damian Lillard does on over half of his possessions.
Exactly. There's no reason not to love him here. Like you said, if he's on the cover of the article, that means one thing. He's one of our favorite plays. Chris Randone, Merry Christmas, brother. We appreciate that. Keep up the good work, fella. I think this game has some of the best plays on the entire slate. And Whiteside, Lillard are two of them. Do you have any interest in McCollum or any of these, middle tier guys? Because McCollum's price is also really friendly.
McCollum's price is absurd. He plays the same minutes as Lillard does,
yep.
And he's having his minutes staggered now. Whether if Anthony's in, right? If Anthony's in, then McCollum's running point with Melo on the floor. If Anthony's out, McCollum's running point without Lillard on the floor still. So you're getting more productive minutes for around a third of the minutes that McCollum's going to play. Even if you just give him like 1 fantasy point per minute and he plays 36 or 37 minutes, you're approaching 6x at that salary on DraftKings. Over the last month, he's averaged 1.07 DraftKings points per minute. Then you factor in that the Pels suck defensively. And while McCollum isn't the really, really high pick and roll guy that Lillard is, he still operates in the pick and roll on 36% of his possessions. He's averaging over 8 pick and roll possessions per game. He's in the 69th percentile in efficiency. It's a good matchup for him. The same reason it's a good matchup for Lillard in all aspects. So I really like both of those guys a lot. They're both cheap enough where I have no issue rostering them together. I don't mind getting them plus Whiteside either. It's just they're underpriced. This game only has a 6-point spread. I'm fine just getting tons of these guys.
We had a good question from Chris. He said, would you limit Lillard, McCollum, and Whiteside to 2? I don't honestly think you need. It's an 11-game slate, so that can get a little bit dicey. But, I'm projecting all of them for very solid games.
Right. So, I wouldn't want every lineup I have to have all 3 guys, obviously. But I'm not limiting it to 2. I'll fine if I get some lineups that have them. And the reason is that none of them are priced even to their median, much less their ceiling. Like, yes, it's unlikely that there's a chance, but it's unlikely the game stays close if Lillard, Whiteside, and McCollum all go for like 50 plus DraftKings points. But you really don't need that at all at their salaries. Like if Lillard goes for 50 something, Whiteside goes for 50 something, and McCollum goes for like 38, you're really happy with all three performances. And because of how much of the offense is going to those guys, how many stats are going to those guys, it's still relatively likely that New Orleans is hanging in the game.
If they all go for 50 plus, we don't need it to stay close.
Right.
You know what I mean? Derrick Rose is playing, available to play. Blake Griffin available to play. There's your info on that. Christian Wood's also available to play. So that I figure we knew that was coming anyway. For Portland, one more thing though, I think you just pointed out something really important. There are times where you're willing to play four guys from one team and you might drop 400 points. It's limiting players from one team makes sense if it's like Anthony Davis, LeBron, and then, I don't know, another 6K guy from the Lakers. But if you're getting guys that are all underpriced on the same team that don't need 60 each to get you where they need to go to hit their target score, then you can play them. So it really all comes down to salary.
Yeah, just like everything else, it comes down to salary. As a general rule of thumb, if your median projection on guys is just smashing their salary, you can be pretty lenient with your rules. I mean, even if, like, let's say that you have two guys, let's take like Whiteside and Scal, for example, and this isn't the case tonight, but let's say that if you project 32 minutes for Whiteside and 16 for Scal, and they both project in those minutes as very, very good plays at their salaries, you wouldn't even have to limit them. So it really does just all come back to salary.
Absolutely. How about the New Orleans side? A lot of these guys I wouldn't say are priced wonderfully, but I think Holiday's reasonable. It's definitely more on the Portland side for me.
Yeah, it's more on the Portland side. I think Ingram, Holiday are both secondary options for me. The pricing is reasonable, but there are guys around them that I like a little bit more. The main priority for me from the Pels is Derek Favors, who Alvin Gentry said he's going to play like 25 to 28 minutes going forward. He played between 27 and 28 minutes against Golden State. He's still really affordable. Portland not very good defensively, so I think Favors, who's averaged well over a fantasy point per minute this year, is the top guy for me from the Pels.
Okay. Anything else from the Pels?
No.
All right. So 2 to go. Then we'll turn it over. EMAC and we got our boy Chris Spags coming up. We've got 2 games, Sacramento and Houston. I don't know. James Harden's salary is pretty wild on DraftKings at $11K. We're talking about someone that not long ago was $12.9. I mean, he's down $1,900 since the 16th of January. Crazy. I mean, that's just nuts. Russell Westbrook is cheap as well. It's just 2 spots that are really hard to get to. Do me a favor. There's someone at my door. Keep talking for 1 second, okay?
Okay. Yeah. So you mentioned, Harden's price is down, and it's a really good price point for him. The thing that makes it so he won't be in, like 100% of my lineups, or I don't think he's necessarily even like a cash lock on DraftKings, is that there are just so many good guard plays, whether it's Bradley Beal for $1,700 less, McCollum, Lillard, potentially Napier from the Minnesota game. So there's just so many guards where paying up at that position isn't necessarily the most appealing. On FanDuel, I think it's a little bit easier to get to him because he's not competing directly with guys like Lillard, with any of the point guards directly. So I think a little bit easier to get there, but clearly underpriced on DraftKings. I'm happy with whatever Harden I get to. Westbrook, the same thing. I prefer Bradley Beal by a little bit. I prefer Dame for $600 less on DraftKings. It is a really slow Sacramento team. I expect them to play faster with the Aaron Fox back, but over the last month they've been the second slowest team in the league. So I think they get back to more of an average, maybe slightly below average pace with Fox, but it's still not the most appealing spot there in terms of possessions either. So I have Westbrook behind Lillard still, have him behind Beal. I think Capella's a strong option too, just because of how many minutes he plays, averaging 1.09 points per minute over the last month. But again, Sacramento, not the fastest team. They've allowed the 5th fewest rebounds per game this season. So really, really appealing DraftKings price tag on Capella, but I would still put him behind someone like Whiteside.
Okay. I said someone's at my door. Ryan on Slack goes, "It's the soup guys," which is like, I said I'm gonna start picking random comments of the week. I'm not gonna tell you when. I'm not gonna tell you who it's happening to because then people just start spamming. Random comment of the week, the best one. It could be a Monday, a Tuesday, or a Friday, and you get a free a free weekly pass to awesomeo.com. So Ryan, when yours is up, that was a tweet that was or a comment that was absolutely fantastic and made me laugh. If it makes me laugh, we're in good shape. We'll talk. But anyway, solid breakdown on Houston. Just to kind of put a bow on it, who would you say are your top options here and comparative to the rest of the slate?
I mean, Harden obviously is the top option, followed by
No
Westbrook.
question.
But yeah, but
Capella's
it's
priced really nicely though. I mean,
yeah, they all are. The thing is just that so many people are priced nicely.
mm-hmm.
Um, it's one of those slates where like the pricing is so soft that ownership should be spread out because there's a million good plays.
Okay. Just to circle back on Westbrook one more time, is the $8,900 price tag on DraftKings and $96 on FanDuel, where would you stack him up against the rest of the guys at his position? Because we have Lillard at 8,300. We have Beal point guard, or shooting guard, but 9,300. Like there are a bunch of guys. Butler 8,100. Where would you put Westbrook? Lowry 8,800. Where would you put Westbrook in comparison to those guys?
So on FanDuel, I have Lowry, Smith, Teague, Lillard, Fox, Payton, Murray, Simmons ahead of Westbrook, factoring in salary. On DraftKings, I have Harden, Lillard, Beal ahead of him.
Okay. What about the Sacramento side? Marvin Bagley starting to see some more minutes. Interestingly, we saw 26 for Bagley last game, and we saw Holmes get 29. So go ahead, and I know we have one more game to get to. We have some time. Break down what we're seeing now, whereas when Bagley first returned, he was only getting backup center minutes.
Yeah, we're seeing him play more minutes alongside Holmes, which is nice. The thing that concerns me is, for one, they've played a couple of bigger teams, but also Bogdanovic has been out. 2 games ago, Ariza was also out. So it's made it a little bit easier to get those minutes for Bagley. If Bogdanovic comes back, I'm not sure if Bagley loses those minutes or not. So Bogdanovic still questionable, but there is at least some risk that he comes back and then they just play Ariza at the 4 over Bagley, which would be pretty frustrating for DFS. But if Bogdanovic is out, I think that projecting around 26 minutes for Bagley is still reasonable.
So, what's up, Z says, Laffy, I liked when you guys used to say who's going to win the game at the end of talking about each game. I'll be honest, I don't ever remember doing that.
Neither do I.
I don't think we did, right?
I don't think I've ever done that.
Okay.
I think if you asked me who was going to win the game, I would say I don't care.
I just wanted to make sure. There were a few good comments in here that I missed. All right. Want to get to the last game, or is there anything else? Do you want to break down a little bit more Sacramento, or is it mostly Houston for you?
It's mostly Houston, but I think De'Aaron Fox is definitely worth talking about. He got back into the starting lineup last game. He played about 30 minutes on the second half of a back-to-back. I gave him 32 minutes here. I assume sooner than later he starts playing more minutes. He's obviously a really productive player when he plays. He's really cheap right now, so I think he's a good option to get to. Buddy Hield salary has come down as well. I have him a little bit behind Fox, but they're actually my 2 favorite guys from Sacramento.
Don Brunetti said an article came out today saying Walton's done playing Bagley, Bjelica, and Rashawn together anymore, so he's probably going back to backup center minutes.
When did he play all of them together?
I don't think he did, but let me just say that it would be wild if a guy in Marvin Bagley, who you drafted so early that has so much promise, is the one that ends up losing minutes because you don't want to play a bunch of guys together anymore.
I don't know about that, just because they're trying to win.
Yeah, but you really think Bagley doesn't give them you think he's the worst of those 3?
Well, I think he's a 5, and he's not as good as Holmes.
You don't think he's as good as Rashawn Holmes?
Not currently.
Wow. Okay. That's a discussion for another day. We'll definitely get into that one, but we don't have time. Let's talk about Golden State and Minnesota. Glenn Robinson has been ruled out. We're still waiting on news for Karl Anthony Towns, which sucks because that's a late game, 10:30 tip, the only game that tips at 10:30. Golden State Warriors are at home, 221 over under. They're 1.5 point dogs. Should be a pretty competitive game in terms of staying close. D'Angelo Russell's another one that might be a product of the slate. I mean, he's also priced very reasonably given his usage and his playing time every single night. Draymond Green is sub 6K. He's been playing, anywhere from 27 to 33 minutes in regulation, and he's certainly looked a lot better outside of a couple ugly games over his last two. So recency bias might knock that out for a couple people. But what are you doing with the Warriors?
I think that Damian Lee was already a strong value before we got the Robinson news. Now I think that his minutes are even more solidified. He played the most minutes on the team last game, and Robinson opens up another 28 minutes. So I think Damian Lee's a really good value. I think D'Angelo Russell's a pretty decent option, but again, there's just so many guards, a lot of them playing more than 32 minutes, so it's tough to prioritize him. Cauley Stein is a tournament pivot off of Baines, but it's not a high probability play. It's just that he should be a lot lower owned. Lee is definitely my favorite guy here, followed by Burks and Russell.
Okay. How about the other side? Minnesota, we're still waiting on news here. Big news. Shabazz Napier also questionable with an illness. So if you look at the write-up on DraftKings, Napier is listed as questionable for Monday's contest, abasing Golden State due to an illness. Assuming they meant against, but he played 30 minutes last game. I was seeing him projected for like a lot of minutes today. I don't know what to do with him, even if he does play.
Sorry, I was trying to catch up. I was trying to read the Bagley article.
I was saying I don't know what to do with Napier, even if he's active.
I'm rostering a lot of him if he's active.
You think? Okay, so what are you giving him in terms of minutes? Is what I mean.
26.
You are going to give him 26 here?
Yeah, he played almost 30. He played 20 in his first start.
And then
he played
30 against Portland, yeah.
Yeah, but the thing for me was that he played a bunch of minutes alongside Teague in that game, and Golden State plays a lot of guard-heavy lineups. So I don't think it'll be difficult to get Napier out there. I think he should play minutes. I think he's a good player. So if he's in, I think he's one of the better values. The problem with this game is that it's obvious it's the last game on the slate, and there's nowhere to pivot to if Napier is out or actually, I guess Napier is not really a problem. You can pivot to Jarrett Culver if Napier is out. Towns or Jang is the bigger issue, where if Towns is in, you're kind of just stuck at that point if it's late news.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you're gonna be stuck moving to Willie Cauley-Stein, which isn't the worst.
Oh yeah, that's
they're the same price in the same game.
Okay, yeah, that's perfect then.
So you could definitely do worse than Willie Cauley-Stein.
Yeah, good goal.
What I meant by Napier was just that this illness kind of popped up out of nowhere. So I worry that, he's going to be active and then not play as many minutes, but sometimes you just got to roll with it. I guess it doesn't really matter. So,
yeah. I mean, my thing with that is obviously there's that risk, but there's also a million times where you get, sure, he's sick.
And they have a huge game.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Derek Burns, Merry Christmas, guys. Thanks for all the advice. Finally had a decent fantasy football week or day yesterday. $10 super chat. Thanks a lot. And hey, appreciate all you guys hanging out with us throughout the year. It's been an awesome 2019, and we wish you a great holiday. Merry Christmas to all of you that have been with us for a while now. If you enjoy the show and you want to help support us, the smallest way you can do it is just hit that thumbs up button. It really does do a lot for us, and it helps us keep putting out free content every day. We appreciate all of you guys. Have a great Christmas. Have a good night tonight. Good luck. We'll see you back here after the holiday on the Deeper Dive presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports.